to see you all here this morning. Full house today. Full house and a lot of fruit in the room today. A lot of fruit. We've come back to those times where you say, God, what is my purpose? What is my reason? What is my... And then He brings it in the door. And it's a reminder. It's a reminder for why we do what we do. So, which is kind of in line with what we're going to share today. Can you turn me up just a little bit, Isaac, maybe? I don't think I'll be yelling too much today. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. I might get excited, though. No yelling, just excitement. Every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. James chapter 1, verse 14. As soon as I find it, we'll be doing really well. James chapter 1, verse 14 says, every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lusts and enticed. We have, I posted on Facebook a couple days ago, I think yesterday, there's a difference between trials and temptations. Sometimes it's hard to know the difference, right? Sometimes it's, man, I'm just being tempted right now, and it's like, no, you're actually just going through a trial. And sometimes it's like, man, when this is trial going to be over? And it's like, no, it's actually temptation. So it's hard sometimes to know the difference. It's important, though, to know the difference, because there's a different response that is warranted for each of those. You don't respond the same to a temptation as you do to a trial. And you shouldn't respond the same to a trial as you would a temptation. So, coming into this understanding of what really is the difference and what how should we respond to these different issues is really vital in our Christian life. It's vital as we continue to walk in this earth, because in order for us to consistently live a life of overcoming and to consistently live a life of victory as a believer, part of that consistency lies in an understanding that we are able to discern the difference between trials and temptations. I've been watching, I don't know why. I don't do any of this. It just, for some reason, has fascinated me over the last few months. Maybe there's a prophetic in there. But a lot of different blacksmithing stuff. There's a guy on YouTube, Alex Steele. He's awesome. He's a kid. He's like 20-something years old. And he's got this big, huge blacksmith shop in Montana. He came from the UK. He moved from the UK to Montana. He set up this big blacksmith shop, so he's got a real thick British accent. And he's just a cool, high-energy, just cool guy. And he really knows his stuff. He's been blacksmithing since he was like 11 years old. And so he's already got more experience than a lot of people. But watching all these things, and it's just, the fascinating part of it is, you could put this metal into a furnace and you can heat it up until it's soft and pliable, and you can beat it, and then when it cools down, you put it back in the furnace and heat it back up, and it's soft and pliable. You bring it back out, and you beat it, and you realize sometimes, in spite of how good you are at tempering this piece of steel, in spite of how good you are at hardening this piece of steel, that even the best blacksmiths still sometimes, when they get their final piece and they go to test it, they realize there's a crack in the metal, a weak spot. And so they'll be testing it and the blade just breaks apart. And it's like, wow. Sometimes that's like 4 or 5 days worth of work just gone. And now you got to start over. So you grab another chunk of steel. You stick it back in the furnace, and you go through the whole process over again. And hopefully by the time you're done, this time you end up with something that doesn't have a crack in it, something that doesn't have a weak point. Trials. This message is kind of a setup for the next several weeks of where I feel God is leading us to go. We're going to be digging into purpose. We're really going to be digging into, over the next several weeks, next several months after Papa EJ gets done with his Bible study, which flows right into the issue of purpose, the issue of hell. And so once we get done with that, we're going to do a 6-weeker on discovering your purpose. And so we're going to just talk about, how do we discover our purpose? What is the reason why we're here? How do we know what God's really called us to do? How do we discover that? How do we find that out? The reality of an individual who does not know their purpose is they are the most unproductive individuals you'll ever find. Because they'll always be jumping from one thing to the next, from one thing to the next, from one thing to the next. Always starting, never finishing. Inside joke. Sorry. But the struggle with that comes down to an unclear understanding of purpose. And all I really have to do in my life, and this isn't the sum total, okay? It's not like, oh, now he just told us, so why do I have to come for the next 6 weeks? But all I really have to do is look in my life and look at what I've hung out in, what I've actually, for some reason or another, refused to quit, refused to give up, refused to back down. Look in that area, and guess what? There's a clue to purpose in there. There's a clue to purpose. All the things that I just started and just fly by night, none of those were purpose. None of them. Because if they were, I wouldn't have given up. I wouldn't have stopped. I would have dug in. I would have dug in. Once you discover your purpose, it shifts your focus and forces you to dig in, and you come to the place where you'll never give up, you'll never stop, no matter how hard it gets, no matter if you're facing the issue of life and death itself, you'll not back away because you are squarely, firmly rooted and grounded in purpose. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So today we have issues / problems. All right. Are you ready? Okay, my spell checker's not here. She took my daughter home. So don't just... know what I mean and not what I write, okay? Know what I mean and not what I write. And I know some of these are going to be a little small because we're trying to... And don't laugh at my handwriting either. Okay, you can laugh at my handwriting. It's okay. Right? Oh. I'll read these off. So if you're having a problem reading them, don't worry. We'll... Getting smaller as I go to the bottom, I think. I don't want to go too far. All right, there's our list of problems or issues. Marriage problems or issues, financial problems or issues, work, family, children, housing, living conditions, health, past, relational, church, ministry, issues or problems. Now, I'm not going to give you an opportunity to lie because I'm feeling like not just we want you to maybe come up to the altar at the end of the service, but not for lying in the middle of the service, okay? So because I'm not going to give you an opportunity to lie, I will tell you that everybody in here is dealing with at least 3 of these. I'm not being prophetic right now. I'm not guessing right now. I'm pastoring right now. Issues in marriage, issues in finances, work. We can go through the list. I'm sure that some of us, and by the way, when I said everybody in here is going through at least 3 of these, I'm in here too, okay? And some of us are going through more than 3 of these. Some of us, we get some compounded issues. Some of us, we get some compounded problems. It's easy to look at this list of issues and problems and think that maybe somehow these are only applicable because we're believers. And so darkness is just beating us up. But the reality of this list is that these are life issues and problems. And they affect believers and non-believers alike. And you might be saying, well, wait a second, you got a couple of things on the list, church and ministry. But how many of you have been listening recently in our Bible study? Wow. Okay. So our Bible study might be extended out another week because we're going to have to do some review and recap for those who aren't listening. But the reality is that church or ministry doesn't just impact believers, because how many of you know that church and ministry is full of non-believers alike? That seems weird. Well, when you remove discernment and you bring in wanting to appease the culture, then you open the floodgates for non-believers, especially in ministry. And so now, our churches are full of non-believers in ministry, trying to minister to other people and get them to become believers when they themselves aren't even, yeah. So these are life issues that are related to believers and non-believers alike. In and of themselves, these are not trials and temptations. It is a reality that at different points and times in your life, you will be working and flowing through these where they will not be issues or problems. I could have moments in my life where I have no marriage problems or issues. Joy and I are just, it's good. It's all good. We've grown up together. We've kind of experienced some things. We've walked through some hardships. We've walked through the problems, and we've come to the other side, right? And it doesn't mean there's not going to be problems again, but it means that for this moment, there are no problems or issues in our marriage. It may be finances or work. I mean, we could go through this whole list and say there are times when we have no problems here. The reality of the list means that, we'll probably still have problems in a couple of these areas, But sometimes they're going to flip-flop. Sometimes I won't have any problems in my marriage, but family. Now, you say family, children, isn't that the same thing? No, because this could be immediate family, brothers, sisters, moms, dads, aunts, uncles, issues with other family members, children, issues. Don't need to say any more about that. I'll leave that one alone. Housing issues. It doesn't necessarily mean you're not in a house. Could mean you just moved into a house. And there's issues. No. No. Living conditions are different than housing. Huh, Kathy? Well, out here, we picked this good plot of land. It was perfect. It was awesome. And then winter. Poof. It's like... But in and of themselves, these are not trials or temptations. In and of themselves, each of these could actually be blessing, right? I mean, man, my marriage is a blessing. The finances that I do have is a blessing. The work that I do have is a blessing. The family, the children, the housing, the living conditions, my health, even if it's not everything that I hoped it would be, it's still a blessing. Right? I mean, so the reality is that these areas open us up for trials and temptations. But they, in and of themselves, are not the trials and temptations. Realize that if I'm having issues and problems in some of these areas, then it's very easy for me to be tempted in regards to these areas. It's crazy. There's a pastor of a megachurch. Twice fallen in adultery. Twice. Still pastor. And his defense of that, well, God knew who I was before He put me in this position. What? Oh, okay. Dude, you got a problem. The temptation isn't the problem. Because if there wasn't a problem here, the temptation wouldn't be there. Come on. You got to figure something out. Here. Same, we can go down the list. So we come into these areas where we have trials and temptations because we have issues and problems here. Look at your life, okay? Just real quick. Just scan the last year, okay? Don't go back forever. Don't get lost on me. Just scan the last year. Where have your temptations and your trials been? What have they been? Now tell me that you can't connect any of those trials or temptations to issues or problems in these areas. because those are life issues, one of the things that we don't realize is that it doesn't matter where we go, where we run. It doesn't matter how many new people we surround ourselves with. It doesn't matter, see, because it's our life. Issues in our life. So no matter where we go, those issues are still in our life. We may get a momentary break just because nobody knows us, but the reality is we're just hiding out until they know us. And man, that's why people hop around so much. They just don't want to deal with the issues. They don't want to deal with the problems in their life. And so they move to a new place, or they go somewhere else. And when they go somewhere else, it seems all good for a while. Everything is nice. Everything is cozy. Everything is fun. But then what happens is that because we are social people, eventually we start getting into a church, or we start getting around a group of individuals, and they start knowing us. And next thing you know, the real us with the life issues and problems rears its ugly head, and now we have a decision to make. Do we face these problems head on? Do we deal with them? Or do we find someplace new to go? See, Rollins is not the cause of issues here. If I was somewhere else, I have greater opportunity. If I had greater opportunity, then I wouldn't have issues. No, see, the reason why finances are an issue is because you haven't learned how to actually live within your means and deal with your finances correctly. It has no bearing. Your location has no bearing on it. So leaving and going somewhere else, maybe it's because you're not in the proper work, or maybe it's because you can't say no to your children, or maybe it's because you're not in the right house, or it's not where you live. That's the problem. It's your life issues that are the problem. Your life issues. The only way to keep from succumbing to life issues is we have to figure out a way to overcome. Right? I mean, that's the bottom line. If I have issues in my marriage, I've got to figure out how to overcome those issues. If I've got issues in my finances, my work, my family, children, housing, living conditions, health, the past, relational, church, ministry, I've got to... The only true answer is to overcome. That's it. Is there any other answer? Not a lasting answer, right? Little clue. Quitting is not the answer. No. Because what happens with quitting is because eventually, at some point in time, we'll end up getting back into what we quit. And if I never overcame, oh, hold up, we just went all the way into temptation, right? We just went all the way into addictions. Quitting wasn't the answer. Overcoming is the answer. Because if I just quit and I never overcame, then I'm going to go back to what I quit. Somewhere I have to discover how to overcome. I have to get a revelation in my spirit of overcoming. It's easy to say, well, we're believers, we're overcomers. That statement is garbage if you don't know how to apply it. Because all you're going to do is you're just going to continue to tell people, you're an overcomer, you're an overcomer. Great! How? Because I don't know. I don't know. And nobody showed me. They just beat me over the head because I haven't overcome yet and tell me that I'm an overcomer. What's wrong with you in your life? Why aren't you as spiritual as I am? But the reality, let's pull back the curtain because you don't even know how to overcome. If we're not careful, these issues and problems, you know what they'll do? They will, smooth can be, pull us and push us away from our purpose. And we will soon be so focused on trying to juggle all of these issues and problems that we will wake up one day and we will find we are miles and miles and miles away from our purpose. We drifted so far. So far. Because we've been focused on the issues and problems. We've been focused in these areas. So what does overcoming look like? Overcoming does not look like rising above. What? But I thought the whole with the wings as eagles and we'll shh. I thought the overcoming meant that I hear it. I've seen it on Facebook. I'm not going to let these people get me down. I'll rise above it. How's that working out? The fact that you posted that means you haven't risen above it. That's exactly it's not the rising above it. It looks like navigating through it. You're not going to get away from these. They're life issues. They're life problems. If you're alive, guess what? You're going to deal with these. Overcoming is it's a way to try to trick your mind into thinking you've gotten victory, but all you've done is attempted to ignore the situation and the problem and ignore dealing with it. And you can only rise above... Can I put an arrow? I'll just draw. It's art class, right? You can only rise above to the point that these don't drag you down. But you set yourself up for failure, because if you're just trying to rise above the storm and ignore the storm below, the storm's going to build. If I ignore issues and problems, they get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And eventually, I can't climb that high. There's no oxygen. I can't breathe up there. Even an eagle has a limit. Jesus didn't rise above the storm. You know that, right? He didn't rise above the storm. Matthew chapter 8. Verse 23. Now when he got into a boat, his disciples followed him. And suddenly a great tempest arose on the sea, so that the boat was covered with the waves, but he was asleep. Then his disciples came to him and woke him, saying, "Lord, save us, we're perishing." But he said to them, "Why are you fearful, O you of little faith?" Then he arose and rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was a great calm. So the men marveled, saying, "Who can this be, that even the winds and the sea obey him?" Matthew chapter 14. Verse 22. Immediately Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side, while he sent the multitudes away. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. Now when evening came, he was alone there, but the boat was now in the middle of the sea, tossed by the waves, for the wind was contrary. Now in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went to them, walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, "It's a ghost." And they cried out for fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Be of good cheer, it is I, do not be afraid." And Peter answered him and said, "Lord, if it's you, then command me to come to you on the water." So he said, "Come." And when Peter had come down out of the boat, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw that the wind was boisterous, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, saying, "Lord, save me." And immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught him and said to him, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?" And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased. Then those who were in the boat came and worshipped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." Two different stories, two different storms, two different occasions. They're in the boat. They're going to the other side. The storm comes up. Two different times, Jesus doesn't float over the storm. He goes through it. He's not, look, overcoming is not, Jesus was an overcomer, right? He said, "Don't fear the world." Why did he say don't fear the world? He said, "Because I've overcome the world." How did he overcome the world? Not just sitting in heaven on his throne above the earth. He came to earth and walked through it. An overcomer is one who goes through, not one who's always seeking to get above. It is being able to navigate through the storm after you've plotted the correct course. Navigating through the storm when you've plotted the correct course. He plotted the course. He got in the boat. And guess what? After he plotted the course and got in the boat, he took a nap. He doesn't care about us. God, don't you care about us? You led us into this thing. Don't you care that we're perishing? God, you led me into this thing. Don't you care that I'm perishing? Dear Lord, you led me into this. Don't you care that we're perishing? The course has been plotted. The course has been set. You're experiencing the storm. Listen, do you know what? If you go back and you read through these sections in context, what you will see is that both shores were points of purpose. The storm is in the journey between 2 points of purpose. Oh, that should have got an amen. I should have got, wow, that was a good point, Prick. Let's go back and say that again. The storm comes between the points of the 2 points of purpose. There was purpose on one side of the shore. They fulfilled their purpose. Now they're in the transition period from one point of purpose to the next, and they get socked with the storm. The next time there was a purpose on the shore, and they fulfilled their purpose on the shore. Then they were in a transition period between 2 points of purpose, and guess what happens again? A storm comes. The church in America is in the middle of the journey between 2 points of purpose. And there's a storm that's brewing. Lord, don't you care about us? You're between 2 points of purpose. You're in the transition. You're going. Look, overcoming is not losing sight of the other shore. Overcoming is in the middle of the storm. I still keep my ship, my vessel pointed towards purpose. That's how you overcome in the middle of the storm. How do I overcome in my marriage? Keep my ship pointed to purpose. Darkness sets themselves up. You know that, right? See, you're going towards purpose. And then the storm comes to try to blow you away, right? The storm comes from the direction of your purpose to try to get you to push you back. But the problem is, see, when you're out on the sea and the waves are raging, the only way that you're going to survive in that storm is if you keep the bow of that ship pointed into the waves. You point your vessel head on to the waves and you give it all you got. That's how you're going to make it through. That you don't turn the boat around. When you've got 40, 50, 60-foot swells, 100-foot swells, waves, it is not the time to turn the ship around. Point the thing into the storm and go head on with all you got. Yep. That's how you get through to the other side. That's how you make it. That's how you keep from having casualties in the middle. It seems contrary to reason. But the safest place is headlong into the storm. How do we deal with temptation when we have life issues and problems? We point our ship, the bow of our ship, towards purpose, and we plunge headlong into the storm. It seems contrary to reason. It doesn't seem like, look, if I try to turn around, if I try to take my ship and go back to where we came from, it's going to capsize. It's going to capsize. You don't run from it. You don't run from it. Look, when you're out in the middle of the storm, this is not the time to run from it. It's too late. It's too late. Get the bow of that ship, point it head on to the waves, and give it all it's got. It's the only way you're going to make it. It's the only way you're going to make it. Two different stories, two different events, separated by time. The first time Jesus was in the boat with them. The second time he wasn't. The first time he showed him how to do it. The second time, he let them try to figure it out. Did they listen? Did they learn? Did they take it? Did they receive it? Are they going to do it right? Standing up there, they say that he stood up on a cliff that overlooked the whole thing, and from where he was at, if they had lanterns on the ship, which they would have had at that point in time, he could have actually seen them struggling in the storm. Just sitting up there watching them. But you know what's amazing about that second story? They struggled. If you do the math on the time and actually look at it, it comes down to like an equivalent of like 9 hours that they were struggling in this storm. For 9 hours they fought the waves. For 9 hours they rowed their ship. But not once in the story does it ever say that they turned around or that they gave up. Not once. And after watching them struggle but never giving up, 3 o'clock in the morning, he comes walking out on the water. Wow. I taught you how. I showed you how. Look at him. Dad, look. No, they're struggling, but look, they haven't given up. 9 hours. Can I go? Okay, I can go now. And he goes to him. They never gave up. We preach all kinds of messages. Oh, Peter's selfish. He got out of the boat. He was never rebuked for that. Wow, what faith. But then you walked in the middle of it and you kind of lost it. Where does this all play in? Go back to James chapter 1. Starting in verse 2. I might as well just read the whole chapter, starting in verse 1. James, a bondservant of God and of the Lord Jesus Christ, to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad, greetings. My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given to him. But let him ask in faith with no doubting. For he who doubts is like a wave of the sea, driven and tossed by the wind. For let not that man suppose that he will receive anything from the Lord. He is a double-minded man, unstable in all of his ways. Let's just stop there for a second. The first time they're in the boat, why were they in the boat? Or why was Jesus in the boat the first time? Do you know what would have happened if Jesus wasn't in the boat the first time? They would not have kept going. They would not have successfully made it from one point of purpose to the next. Not because they're failures of men. they didn't know. They didn't understand. They didn't understand that what's playing out in front of them, that what they were participating in was a divine image of going from purpose to purpose. They didn't know that. Jesus said, let's go on the other side. Look, they see the storm coming up. Look, man, we've been on this lake, okay, a lot. And what I'm seeing over there, we best just go back and call it a night. Okay? Let's just... Jesus had to be in the boat to make sure they made it to their second point of purpose. If he wasn't with them, they wouldn't have gone. They wouldn't have made it. So he's in the boat. The course has been charted. He's going to fall asleep. I'm taking a nap. Because I know where we're going. I know what we're doing. He's an overcomer. They're not. But he needs to be in the boat. But then over the span of time, which really wasn't that long of time, but over the span of time from the one episode to the next, he taught them how to be overcomers. He was teaching them how to overcome. And now he said, okay, now we're going to do this again. Now we're going to go from one point of purpose to the next point of purpose. I want you guys to go over there. I'll meet you there. Wait, he's not coming with us? I thought he always with us. I thought in everything Jesus was with us. And I'm praying and I'm praying and I'm praying. Silence. Huh, Levi? God, why don't you answer me? God, why don't you care about me? Maybe the reality is because he's already showed you how to get through the storm. And now it's time to see if you're going to turn back or if you're going to press in. And maybe, just maybe, after the long night of pressing in and pressing in and pressing in and not giving up and not quitting and never backing down and never turning around, and you press in and you press in, maybe, just maybe, you'll look up and you'll see him walking on the water. The course has been charted. I don't need to be in the boat with you. I don't need to be there. I've taught you how to overcome. I've taught you how to overcome. My Spirit is with you. My Spirit, His Spirit is always with us. The same Spirit, listen, the same Spirit that gave him the confidence to rest in the first storm is with us in the second storm. His Spirit that gave him the power to stand and rebuke the wind and the waves, and it obeyed, that same Spirit is with us. I taught you how to overcome. I taught you how to get... Look, I didn't teach you how to not have problems in your life. That's not what I taught you. I didn't teach you how to get from one side of the lake to the other with no storm. I taught you how to go through the storm. He is teaching us how to go through the storm. Some of us might be in situations where we're in a storm that Jesus is in the boat, and we're thinking, God, why don't you care? You're sleeping on me. But some of us may have already been in those situations, and now we're just in the boat, and Jesus seems like He's nowhere to be found. Be careful in that moment. Be careful in that moment. It's really easy. It's really easy to look at the storm and understand that Jesus is nowhere to be found, and to turn from your purpose. You're on a journey. It's hard. It's hard. But on both sides of this thing, you got 2 points of purpose. The cool thing about the storm, you want to know the cool thing about the storm? The storms themselves can't keep you from purpose. If you don't turn the boat around, the storm can't keep you from getting to the other side. Come on. Come on. It can't keep you from... Why? It doesn't have the authority. When God sets His purpose, nothing has the authority to keep His purpose from coming to pass. Which means the storm can't keep you from your purpose. It can't stop you from getting there. These issues, they can't stop you. They don't have, in and of themselves, they don't have the authority to stop you from getting to your purpose. Tree of knowledge of good and evil placed in the Garden of Eden. Well, maybe God tempted them. No. Why would God do that if that wasn't His purpose? That's His purpose. One of His purposes for creating humanity was not to have a race of robots. His purpose was to have a race of people who had free will. And they freely chose to be in relationship with Him. Forced relationship is no relationship. It has to be a freedom of choice. That is the only place where you're going to find, throw it back here, wait, the gumption to make it through the storms. How do we go from September 15th, 2007. She is watching. From September 15th, 2007 to September 15th, 2020. 2 days away. "13 years. How did we go?" Because the purpose and plan of God is awesome. Because we freely chose. In the midst of the storms, in the midst of the problems, in the midst of the issues, in the midst of the trials, in the midst of all the temptations, we freely chose each other. So 13 years, looking forward to the next 13 years. Because we will continue to choose each other. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what storms come up. Because we know how to get through them. We know how to get through them. We point our vessel into the waves, head on, give it all we got. We'll make it through. We'll make it through. How did we go from February of 2010 it was April or May, could have been March, one of those 3 months, 2010. That's what we made for a month. I didn't even realize that that's all we had made for the month until it was tax time and we did our taxes, and I'm looking through the bank accounts. Somehow this number got us through the month. How did we do that? How did that happen? Because the storm can't stop you from your purpose. Moving here from Sheridan. Why would you do that? Why? No, why? Purpose. Purpose. Purpose is why. Why have I never left? Why have we refused in 10 years, in spite of the storms, in spite of the battles, in spite of the, I'm tired, I want to quit? Why did we not? Because the storm can't keep you from your purpose. And just because you knew your purpose doesn't mean you're not going to run into storms. I didn't know what my purpose was, really, in coming down here. I didn't know. All I knew is that it was part of our purpose. God said, go. That's what I had. God said, go. Okay. And so we went. We came. Every time, listen, every time the storm got more than we thought we could bear, the reason why we're still here is because in 2010, God said go. And He never changed His mind since. This is the course of direction that we're on. This is the course that was plotted for us. And God said go. God didn't change the direction. God didn't change the direction. Times in the last 10 years, God, maybe 11 years, God, maybe why didn't we move or go somewhere or do something different or... No. No. So the only way that I made it through the storms was to go back to the place where God last spoke concerning this, concerning purpose. That means that for the last 10 years we've been transitioning from one point of purpose to the next. And it's been right here. And guess where the shore for the next point of purpose is going to be? Woo! We're excited. We've actually come to the place where we're happy about that. We're good with that. Yes, why? Because the point of purpose is the most ultimate blessing of the Lord. This is the place that the Lord has... I know it's not the Scripture, right? This is the day the Lord has made, but this is the place the Lord has made. And I will be happy and rejoice in it. Because it's good. It's good. It's good. They're walking through the wilderness and God says, I am taking you to the place I have prepared for you. But not everything in that place to the outside, to the physical eye looked good. But that is where the blessing is. Now, what is the blessing? Oh man, once we get there, we're going to have millions of dollars in the bank. We're blessed by God. Whew, that's the blessing. When you're in the will of God, you're blessed, right? And I've heard that, and it's true. But you have to define what blessing is. Blessing is provision. It doesn't look like always $1 million in the bank. It doesn't look like always the new car in the driveway of the new house. Blessed if you have those things, not knocking those things at all. If you have the financial ability, good on you. But that's not the definition of blessing. The definition of blessing is provision. The definition of blessing is safety in the midst of the storms. The definition of blessing is the power to overcome, which means the power to walk through the storm and get to the other side. That's the definition. Blessing. Blessing. I'm blessed. Purpose is the power to overcome. Purpose is the only thing that will keep life issues in the list of life issues and keep them from becoming purpose stealers. You have to understand. I know we're all struggling, church. I know we're all struggling. I know we're fighting storms in these areas that seem insurmountable. I mean, we've gone through storms before, but this is a whole different level of storm. This is a whole different scale of storm. This is like, I mean, what we went through before was a windy day on the lake compared to this Category 5 hurricane that we finally find ourselves in. I get it. I totally get it. But the storm doesn't have the power to keep you from purpose. It doesn't have the power to do that. It doesn't have the authority to do that. And purpose doesn't mean that you're not going to run into the storm. Matter of fact, purpose means you're probably going to hit it smack dead head on. Here it comes. Get ready. Matter of fact, maybe you should batten down the hatches before you leave the shore. Do a little repairs on the boat first, because it's going to get a little rough out there. Okay? Do a little work on your vessel. Do a little work on your vessel, because the storm is coming. And when you get in the middle of the storm, instead of asking Jesus, where are you? Ask God, I need wisdom. I'm in the middle of a storm and I need wisdom. I need wisdom. See, I have a decision before me. I have a choice before me. I need wisdom. What is it that aligns with your purpose? Which direction? Where is the headlong into the storm? Because I know if I turn my boat around now, it's not going to be good. So how do I steer this thing head on into the waves for the safest possible outcome? But if any of you lack wisdom, let them ask of God, who gives liberally to all men. But let them not doubt. The NLT, I love the way the NLT, the New Living Translation, says that in that verse. He says, but let them not have any other loyalties but to God. For let not that man think that he'll receive anything. When I ask for wisdom, do you know when I get wisdom? When I refuse to have any other loyalties to the wisdom of man. God, I'm going to put down the wisdom of man. I need your wisdom in this moment. Whatever you tell me, I will do. That's when God gives liberally. As long as there's this tendency to put down what he tells you and to turn back to what man has told you or what the world has told you, let not that person think you're going to receive a thing from God. You've got no business even asking. Get your head right, get your heart right. Determine within yourself, whatever God says, I'll do. And then ask, God, what should I do? The person who's tossed to and fro, double-minded man who's tossed to and fro, it's a man without purpose. It's a man who hasn't discovered his purpose. Because if you've discovered your purpose, it doesn't matter how much the storm rages, you know where you're going. You know where you're going. You'll focus. You'll dig in. You'll do what needs to be done. You'll know where you're going. And you'll know that the storm can rage around you, but it's not going to capsize you. Lord, I thank you for your word. Lord, we have a purpose. Lord, I even think of all of our visitors today. Lord, Annette and Greg's visitor today, Lord. I haven't had a chance to meet her yet or get her name, but Lord, she's got a purpose. You have a purpose for her. And I know that the storms are hard. I know that they're hard. And even for her, Lord, I know that the storms are raging all around her. But Lord, you've given her such an amazing purpose. Lord, you've set her feet in a direction that she should go. Give her strength to stay the course, Lord. Encourage her. Strengthen her. Help her to lean on her friends for that word of maintaining the course, Lord. I think of Justin and his wife who have come to us today, Lord. Lord, there's a purpose. God, you have such a purpose for their life. They're not just wandering aimlessly, Lord. That's not what you've called them to. You've called them to a specific direction, to a specific purpose, to a specific moment. Lord, I break off the assignments of the enemy against them, Lord. That there would be clarity of mind in their hearts. Lord, that they would see today, Lord, see today with true clarity, Lord, purpose and calling on their life. Lord, it's more than where they've been. It's more than what they've been doing. Lord, you have such an amazing assignment for them in their life, Lord. Lord, I think of our other brothers today, Lord, that have come to us today, Lord. Oh, Lord, what an amazing day. What a blessing to us to see the fruit of our labor. To redefine to us purpose. To help us in the midst of our storm, Lord. Here at harvest time, the storm that we're going through, Lord, as a church, that you have brought in the midst of this storm. Well, we peeked through the clouds today and we saw the shoreline of purpose once again. Oh, Lord, thank you. And Lord, you have a purpose for each of them. Such a purpose, Lord. Give them strength in the midst of their storms. Lord, I think about the rest of us in this building today, Lord, as I mentally go through each one of our family members in this place. I see the storms. I can look on this list, Lord, and I know the issues. I know the problems. And Lord, I know that there is a temptation in this moment to be pulled from purpose. And Lord, I pray you give them wisdom. I pray, Lord, you give them wisdom. That they would make it through the storm. They wouldn't turn around. They wouldn't look back. Remind them, Lord. Remind them that they are overcomers. Every single one of them. Remind them that their power to overcome is because you've charted the course. And overcoming just simply means sticking to the course. I thank you, Lord. We love you so much. As we move from this place, help us keep our eyes focused on you. And if it doesn't feel like you're in the boat, then let that be a gentle reminder that it's because we know how to overcome. I just need to stay the course. Thank you, Lord. Pray this in your name. Amen.